the flame of their existence, scythe through them as if they were mere blades of grass.
What's going on, guys? Running it back with another replay, and we're getting right into the action, actually. We got Quadruple Horseman here in the opener, up against Bull, who's going to be bringing his own Quad Horseman build. A couple Horse Masters mixed in with some regular Marauder Horsemen. Very efficient skirmish core. Horse Masters in general tend to be quite a nuisance for Khorne, especially in the counter-skirmishing game. Javelins just tend to be a little more accurate than your throwing axes are. We get a little bit of poke in here, though, against these Horse Masters, who are quite expensive. That can be your saving grace if you get some good volleys off on them in the value trade. But we're just running back and forth, screening each other out a little bit. He's getting a decent hold on these objectives. Taking the number 1, working on the number 2, pushing me off of the objective as well, which is very unfortunate, and he does actually take it. Archeon hanging out on the number 3, securing that objective as well, and we do have, for the infantry, a lot of Marauders, a couple of, just one Chaos Warrior Great Weapon. I believe he brings another one out later in the game. Soul of Damnation on the field, very powerful artillery piece, and very, very difficult to deal with for Khorne. There are some tips you can, work on to be able to get back there and actually deal with this thing, but oftentimes I find, just actually going in and getting mixed into combat tends to be a better way of dealing with this thing. It's going to get its value. It's very hard to dive also. The crew is pretty resilient. The actual artillery piece has a decent chunk of HP. And you can really spend a lot of time going after it and feed a lot of value into trying to deal with it. So we'll see how my strategy works here and what exactly it is I'm going to do. Skullcrushers of Khorne are going to be my centerpiece of this army. Valkyria's up in the sky hanging out. I have some Exalted Bloodletters as well, and then just, you know, a bunch of Marauders with some Fleshhounds to support. The Throwing Axes and the Skullcrushers actually getting some good damage here on the Skirmisher Corps now. Skullcrushers intercept some of the horsemen, kill several models of them here, and are just pushing up and getting ready for a big fight. They're getting a little too deep here, but my opponent's Hellstriders, actually not the worst unit for me to take a fight against here in this situation. Now, my Skullcrushers are going to take a decent amount of damage from the Javelins here. Luckily, though, they've got the 130 armor, so they are quite resilient against that, and they are putting a beat down on the Hellstriders right now. Doing big damage, getting a decent little side charge here to break the leadership on these Hellstriders in just a second here. There they go. Fury's going to start screening out the horsemen and really pushing to overwhelm my opponent's flank here, while the Marauders are gearing up for the main infantry attack. They have taken quite a bit of damage from the Soul of Damnation, which does have about 400 value, 64 kills, just very consistently racking it up for my opponent. Skullcrushers now going to focus in on running over these Marauders and the Throwing Axes. Very good answers at killing the core here of infantry. Some Forsaken moving up, doing some good damage, and the Soul of Damnation actually hitting their own guys here, doing a decent chunk of damage to Bull's own Marauders here. And the Forsaken, that shot was actually pretty devastating for both of us. Furies, Marauders, Skullcrushers crushing these two Marauders out here on the flank. I'm going to be working on trying to get away from these Chaos Warrior Great Weapons. The Marauders are a little trapped up. Unfortunate for them. I do have my Skullcrushers lending a little bit of aid, but I'm going to be pulling them out now just so they're not stuck in this combat for too long. Back here, I do have the Hounds of the Blood Hunt and some more Fleshhounds going after the other Chaos Warrior Great Weapon. Trying to get away from Archeon. Archeon taking a little bit of damage from the Fleshhounds. They actually are decent at chewing on Horse Lords. Archeon, though, has a ton of armor, so it's a little ineffective to be going after them. Sleipnir misses a little bit, unfortunately, but we do get a good follow-up on these Marauders here, and it does do a little bit of damage here to the Chaos Warriors. Hellstriders coming in from the flank do get on top of my horsemen, and the horsemen are very beat up. At least one of them is. The other few are about at half health. One here much healthier than the others. And the Skullcrushers, thankfully, do intercept the majority of these Hellstriders, doing a lot of good work for me. You know, they're down to about half health, but they've got almost 1,000 value, which isn't too bad. We'll be seeing if we can get anything extra out of those guys. Fury's unfortunately crumbling on me right now, which is a little odd. I'm not entirely sure how their leadership broke and then recovered, and then demonic instability just kept going and they crumbled out, but we're going to persevere through it regardless. Archaon and Valkia fighting fisticuffs. The Demon Shield does go down, gives me a nice little opportunity to get some good damage on Archaon. Archie is an incredible duelist. Slayer of Kings going down. You know, a couple Spirit Leeches have also been hitting Valkia and been doing good work, but thankfully, as Demon Shield wears off, we do get the Hounds of the Blood Hunt in here who are going to buffer a little bit, and Archaon actually not wanting any of the damage from Valkia here. Exalted Bloodletters fighting and getting shot up by the Soul of Damnation, but doing good work against the Chaos Warriors here, popping Relentless Rage just to keep these guys healthy, and thankfully that is active while they are getting shot up. And back here, Fleshhounds with the Horseman support actually locking down all of the Skirmish Cav for Bull right now. Big win for me. Now, the trade isn't going tremendously for me. I am down in value, but actually breaking all of these horsemen here is going to be very nice for me. It's going to leave my opponent a little bit more beat up than I am in the mobility game, and Khorne's mobility in the later stages of games oftentimes is what wins you the big engagements at the end of the day. Skullcrushers with 149 kills, crushing some of the Cav here, doing a little bit of poke against the Great Weapon Warriors here. These Great Weapon Warriors I don't have a great answer to right now. The other one has been pretty effectively handled by the Exalted Bloodletters, who have done some really good work. Not quite going to get their value back, mostly because the Soul of Damnation has just been an absolute terror this entire game. Paying for itself already, and it's still got 12 shots. This thing having 40 ammunition is pretty incredible. It is definitely one of the better RORs in the game. Very quick firing, very devastating unit. Fleshhounds over here, Hounds of the Blood Hunt crumbling out, but the other Fleshhounds helping rout the remaining Marauders, and Bull's infantry is very tattered now. Some Minotaurs finally coming out onto the field for me. Now that the Skullcrushers are very tattered, I figured it would be a very good idea to save up and bring in a very heavy-hitting, you know, anti-large unit just in case, and it's actually a good thing that I did, because Rotting Rider's hiding in the trees right now, coming out of the back spawn point here, riding up through the trees, trying to get a good ambush on me. Luckily, I managed to pull my Skullcrushers away. I was chasing these Hellstriders that were after my horsemen, but I realized I wasn't going to catch, and I decided to just get those guys away. I didn't even see the Rotting Riders, but very nice situation for me being able to get away there. Khorngors and Valkia. Sleipnir does go down to help ease the success of this fight. Khorngors are pretty decent on the charge, and they can do some pretty good damage with their AP halberds. They've got a pretty decent melee attack as long as Frenzy and Primal Fury are up, and Valkia being there also helping me crush this last infantry unit of my opponent, and I'm looking to be in a pretty good spot. One more Chaos Warrior Great Weapon is moving out onto the field, but I do have a decent chunk of units left. Rotting Rider is going to get a good downhill charge against my poor Marauders, but luckily they hold up those very elite Nurgle anti-large cavalry just long enough for the Skullcrushers to get back and then turn around and re-engage. Now, they are otherwise in a really bad fight, but Relentless Rage, one of the best army abilities on any of the Mono God rosters, in my opinion. Look at the damage these guys are taking, down to 259 HP, but they get another 5 seconds of combat, getting up to 1,800 value. They were at about 1,400 when I popped Relentless Rage, and they got an extra 500 gold value out of that, putting the damage in on the Rotting Riders, no less. A very, very powerful ROR unit. Khorngors and Minotaurs also collapsing now and doing big damage to this very elite unit that Bull honestly really needs to perform here if he's going to actually be able to win this game. He does have a little bit of a gold value lead on me still, and if you look at our armies, they're pretty comparable as of right now in terms of what we have on the field. Value-wise, it's pretty even. We've both got two very elite infantry units on the field, mine being the Brutes of the Hound. Pretty nice ROR, and they are unbreakable, so getting shot at by the Soul of Damnation is not great for them, but they're in a looser formation, so it's not killing as many models as it might otherwise be, and they'll do decently against the Great Weapon Warriors here. They just hit so hard with their 60 melee attack, and good melee strength, or weapon strength, I should say, even with relatively low AP. They just hold in there, and they get lots of buffs from Berserk, and they just absolutely shred stuff in a prolonged engagement. So, loving that. Minotaurs of Khorne are out here. I've got some Khorne Gores and some Marauders. Throwing javelins, I should say, out on the field again. One Horseman, one Horsemaster. We've got Rotting Riders here, and the Hellstriders desperately trying to escape right now. Maneuvering my Minotaurs around just to stay with the Brutes of the Hound so the Hellstriders can't just side charge them and obliterate them. And unfortunately for Bull, a little bit of a lapse in micro here. Fury's able to jump on top of one Hellstrider, Minotaurs get on the other, and this Minotaur unit gonna absolutely flatten these Chaos Warrior great weapons here. Minotaurs are an excellent unit even against heavily armored infantry just because of the AP and the big halberd attacks, man. They're hammering these guys. Take a decent chunk of their HP out and leaving the Brutes of the Hound and the other Minotaur unit to replace and just refresh that charge bonus. Get some really good damage, and Archaon in danger now. Trying to run away, Valkia pops Demon Shield. Bull does get out of this fight, luckily for him. And now I've got two Minotaur units against a pretty beat-up Rotting Rider. They haven't had a lot of time to replenish their HP with the regeneration either. And now collapsing on them with both Minotaur units. It's gonna be not the worst fight for the Rotting Riders in terms of being able to do damage to these targets, but there's just way too much of an overload for them to actually be able to handle this fight. They do terrify the Khorne Gores, luckily for them, but the sandwich from the Minos just absolutely wrecking these guys, man. 1100 value despite the bad fights that they've been in, but having two very healthy Minotaurs. My opponent's Hellstriders are gone. We've got some Throwing Axes, absolutely flattening Warhounds. Throwing Axe Horsemen are excellent against Hound units. They just absolutely obliterate them. Even if Hounds get a charge off on these guys, they have a little bit better armor than most other skirmish cav, so they don't even mind that situation too horribly. Marauder Great Weapon's going to be fighting my Tattered Marauders up here. Lots of people would have unsummoned these Marauders. Honestly, I would typically tend to agree, but I'm kind of liking the fact that they're just on the field to be able to occupy and then give the Hounds of the Bloodhunt a great chance to rear charge these Marauder Great Weapons. This is going to be a very devastating fight for those Great Weapons. You can see how much the rear charge is doing, and the Hounds of the Bloodhunt didn't do well the first time around, but they're absolutely shredding the perfect target for them right now. Brutes of the Hound following up as well, gonna help clean up this fight, and gonna give me a very nice presence on the battlefield. Bull has a lot of supplies, though. Definitely needing to summon in more than what he's got. We were on Discord in the middle of this game, and he was desperately trying to summon in Hellstriders here, which I do understand, but I think just bringing out some infantry wouldn't have been a bad idea either. I bring out some Forsaken. Forsaken, just a really nice unit to be able to run in and chase. They're much better after getting the extra 800 HP. It's a big HP buff when you think about it. More than 10% of their HP pool being added onto. Really nice. Really, really, really nice for me. Archaon fighting Valkia up here, and Valkia actually able to get the rout on Archie here. She is very beat up herself. One Spirit Leech did go down before Archie here is going to die, and that's a big win for me, but unfortunately Valkia does break for some reason. Losing your Lourdes Khorne is never a good idea, but killing Archie in return isn't a bad trade. Gonna give me a really nice position, and I have a big advantage over Bull right now. Bull desperately needs to get units out onto this field. 2,700 supplies being banked up right now. I'm not 100% sure why he was hanging on to so much. I know he wanted Hellstriders, but I feel like just bringing out anything would have done him some good here. He does bring up Hellstriders, more Horsemasters. really nice units, but I've got plenty of answers out on the field. I have Minotaurs, I've got 2 Flesh Hounds, one of which is the ROR, one just a regular old Flesh Hound, which did really well the first go-around. Forsaken alone are really good against Hellstriders and even the Horsemen, just because they've got 46 foot speed. They can actually close the distance reasonably well. Hellstriders trying to find a way into my Horsemen, but do get pushed back by the Minos. Really good micro from Bull, throwing in here and getting some good damage. These Hellstriders overextending a little bit. I don't get the charge, unfortunately, but I do get a little bit of damage on the Hellstriders as they peel out and retreat. And I'm just going to be trying to play for time here. Brutes of the Hound hanging out on the #1 objective. Valkia did rally, and she's hiding at the edge of the map, of course. Don't want to leave her in a position where she can die now. You know, I can't unsummon her, so might as well just keep her safe, right? Charge comes in from this unit of Hellstriders. Forsaken take the worst of it. They didn't get a charge off, unfortunately, but they did do a little bit of work in return, which isn't too bad for me. And Bull getting screened out pretty hard right now. Lots of Marauders coming out on my end now, and I think he's saving up to bring in Archaon, but the points lead, very favorable for me at this stage of the game. I've been controlling the objectives pretty well. Furies laying on top of the Hellstriders, taking quite a bit of damage, but Flesh Hounds, Hounds of the Bloodhunt specifically, going to be moving up to assist in this fight. They get a nice charge off. They're going to crush the Warhounds, and then the Hellstriders aren't going to be too long for this world after them. They're pretty beat up already. Hounds of the Bloodhunt don't love fighting Hellstriders, but if they're weakened already and you can get a good charge off, it's usually not too bad of a fight, and Bull is going to call it there. Very close game, very scrappy, especially in the early going when the Soul of Damnation was out on the field. I was definitely on the back foot for quite a while there in terms of value, but Coronate leadership and perseverance definitely coming in clutch there, and just being patient and summoning out the big threats like the Minotaurs with great weapons, definitely helping me out into the late game. Just because Minos are so good at killing Hellstriders. Hellstriders, you can probably double team a Minotaur and beat it. That's a little difficult, and especially when you're at a numbers disadvantage and Khorne has infantry on the field with a few like support elements like Hounds or Furies. Hellstriders suddenly become a lot worse, and it's a little bit harder to find value with them. Like in the Slaanesh matchup, it's a little different because you just have so many swarming elements as Slaanesh. You've got the Seekers in addition. That, you know, it's a little bit easier to actually crush Khorne in those scenarios. But Warriors of Chaos don't have Seekers, so the Hellstriders do really well, and they're excellent on the Warriors of Chaos roster. But you really have to be sure to follow up with some more hard-hitting support that can buffer for them, or they're just going to end up getting beat up on. Like, Skullcrushers were doing a really good job of handling these guys. Furies were shredding them, and then Minotaurs also beat up on them pretty badly. And those were probably my saving graces there. And just being able to push up cheap Marauders in the late game to, you know, fully secure objectives also being what kind of broke Bull's back here. Losing Archaon didn't help any either. He probably could have resummoned Archie at the end there. It probably would have been a little too late. 1900 value on Skullcrushers. Much better after the speed buff. They were pretty good before, but they struggled to get into combat. Like, it's never been about their stats. Their stats are fine. They hit really hard. They've got good mass. They're quite threatening, honestly. They had 62 or 63 speed, I think, which was about the same as at Orc Boarboy. And it just felt really bad constantly trying to chase stuff with Skullcrushers and never actually catch anything. But getting up to 70 has been a big boon for them. They're a much better unit now, and I really have enjoyed using them when I'm bringing them out. They benefit a lot from the Bloodspeaker. Bloodspeaker's very good at supporting Skullcrushers, but they're pretty good even without him. I just think that that's probably one of the best Lord choices for supporting your hyper-elite mobile cavalry. Maybe sometime I'll try and show that off in a video. Exalted Bloodletters did okay, 1,000 value on them. You know, Marauders did whatever they needed to do. Mostly just there to take damage from the Soul of Damnation, which did get 2,200 value. Not the most I've seen on it, but that is pretty efficient. Valkia did alright. She didn't do as well as Archeon. I could have used my Sleipnirs a little bit better. That first one was a little limp. Second one actually won me a pretty crucial fight. Khorngors, again, they kind of got shot up by the Soul of Damnation, but, you know, one of them did a little bit better than the other. And Brutes of the Hound actually were doing quite a bit of work. 720 gold value damage, despite all of the focus fire coming in at the end there. And you can see the power of these guys when they actually are able to get into combats. And they had a decent little bit of health left. They probably could have ground out the remaining bit to actually pay for themselves. Fleshhound's good, Minotaur's good. They were well on their way to paying for themselves. And yeah, Fury's pretty nice. Only brought the one out twice. Didn't quite get its value back, but it did what it needed to do, and it was very healthy at the end there. Would have provided me a lot of additional value, I think, towards the end of the game. Rotting Riders for Bowl, kind of a letdown, unfortunately, but kind of hard to find great engagements against Khorne with those guys. Just the Marauder Horseman throwing axes are more than enough to deal with these guys if you can get them in a bad enough situation. And then having to deal with Skullcrushers and multiple Minotaur units, just a little bit too much of a threat overload. And I think just maybe more Marauder Great Weapons would have been a pretty good idea for Bowl. More infantry presence out against Khorne is usually a better idea than not. Because if you can break down the Khorne's objectives, Stranglehold, which is kind of what developed into the late game, then you can actually force Khorne into some pretty bad fights. Khorne does really well when you're actually hanging on to objectives and your opponent is having to come to you. Makes things a lot easier in terms of the momentum of the battlefield and gives you better opportunities to engage. And Bowl just wasn't really able to hang on to much of anything once the infantry went offline. And then when the Soul of Damnation had to get unsummoned, that was another big moment where he lost a lot of momentum, but really well played regardless. And it was razor close. It could have bounced either way at a couple of key points, I think. But I'll leave you guys off here. I hope y'all enjoyed this replay, and I'll catch you on the next one. GG's. Peace.